Hello, everybody. Good to have you here on this panel on money. So you need money. And of course, we all need money. But what do we need money for? Especially in this sector, money usually comes last. We need money to make art, to produce art, to deliver art, to make it visible. So money is usually a means to an end. It's not an end in itself. But still, it's quite important. So if you want to get the kind of financing you need, it's still quite complicated. So maybe we can start with the first slide, and then we go on from there. Within Creative Flip, we developed this concept of the financial ecosystem, and this consists of 4 parts. And these 4 parts are, the first one is about the availability of the right financial facilities for different sectors at different stages of development. So, for example, a large museum needs another kind of financing than a starting fashion designer or a musician or somebody who wants to put out a photo book. So when do you use this kind of funding? Public funding, loans, crowdfunding, capital, community funding, etc. Which financial facilities are available on a local level, on national level, regional level, or EU level? The second part is that you also need capacity building, because it's not so easy to be able to manage all those kind of financial facilities. So it's also about the acquisition of financial skills. The third part is about the need for information and matching, because handling all those different kinds of financial facilities is not always the easy part. And not everybody knows what is available or what can be used for what. The fourth part, and that's also a very important part, is policy making. Because without policy making, a lot of these facilities would not be available. And of course, it makes the other 3 parts functioning. So, but when you need money, it's always the question, what value can you provide for whom? It puts value before money. Now, one of our products within the Creative Flip project is the guide So You Need Money. And Isabelle de Voldere of Idea Consult is the first panel member we're going to talk to. And she will explain you shortly the steps we follow in this So You Need Money guide. So maybe next slide. Isabelle.
Yes, thank you, Joost. And indeed, I'm very happy today to present the guide that we jointly developed. So You Need Money guide, which is actually also online as of today, online available. So I invite everybody to take a look at the guide. And why did we actually decide to develop this was really going back to the pillars that you presented, and the ecosystem is on the first first element, contributing to capacity building, both with cultural and creative actors, but also with financiers, but then also this matching, this information and matching. And what we try to do in this financing guide is really to guide cultural and creative actors through a thinking process of, okay, so you think you need money, and posing a lot of questions, actually, really guiding them through a thinking process. Why is it really that you need money? And we, in the guide, you'll find several reasons or why you would need money, and then from there look at what kind of financing instruments are available that fit your financing needs. But then maybe even more important is also to take a step back in this guide, and not sometimes cultural and creative actors, as other companies or other starters think they need money, but maybe if they if they think about other questions, there might be other solutions, or maybe there might be also other problems first to start. And so this is what we try to do with this guide, is posing a lot of questions and making people to think about this process, because as you say, Joost, financing is a means to something else. And the first question is, okay, what is your purpose as a culture and creative actor, the project that you need funding for? What is the impact that you want to create? And from there, think about what could be then maybe the best financial instrument to serve that purpose and to make sure that I can realize this project. So in this funding guide really guides you through this thinking process. We also have included several case studies, illustrations of culture and creative ventures that have went through this process, and so they are also included in the guidebook as inspiration coming from different subsectors. So that's.
We'll speak to him later.
Yeah. Voilà.
But how can this guide be used at the best way? What do you think?
No, you can go back to the previous slide. I'll keep this one for the previous slide. Sorry. Yes, thank you. How can it be used? Well, of course, culture and creative actors can look. Can go through the guide themselves, be inspired by the cases that are there. But I think it's especially also a very interesting tool to help in the conversation between financiers and culture and creative actors. For instance, in creative hubs, or business support organizations that give advice to culture and creative actors on what are the possibilities when it comes to finance, how do they relate to a business model. We've also tried to develop a kind of common language when thinking about a business model and how it relates to funding. So in that sense, we also hope that the guide that we have developed will become a tool, a working tool in those advisory processes as well.
Talking about language, and there's also a big glossary in there, but also talking about language in different perspectives. There's also another product developed, like the Flip to Act game. Yeah. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, that's indeed.
Next slide.
It takes a different angle, but again, and in the philosophy of Flip and Creative Flip is a collaborative game that we have developed. We call it Flip to Act, and it's a game that. Where we want to stimulate the conversation and the exchange between different stakeholders in the ecosystem. Policymakers on the one hand, financiers, different types of financiers, but also culture and creative intermediaries and actors, entrepreneurs themselves. So it's a game where the players of the game take up a specific role. You can be a policymaker, or you can be a financier, a specific type of financier, and together you have to come to specific actions that you take, each from their responsibility and from the role that they play, to solve specific problems. And it's a playful game. But at the same time, it triggers a very interesting conversation between different stakeholders, because you play the game, you can play it in different rounds, and the value or the added value also of the game, apart from the fun, is a conversation later on and the exchange. So you then reflect about the actions that you take. And then afterwards, you maybe come back given having heard the actions that others have taken in the game, you might change to improve it and actually in a collaborative setting come to a better set of measures to solve the problem. And that is the whole idea of this game. But to know more about it, I invite you tomorrow. We have the workshop at 2 o'clock, where we will specifically show the game and get into the board, and you will tell more details about how it works. And the same goes actually for the funding guide. Also, there we have a workshop in parallel with the workshop on the collaborative game, also at 2 o'clock, for those that are interested in hearing more about the guide.
Okay, thank you, Isabelle. I'm going to move to our next panel speaker, Paolo Montemurro. He is director of Materahub, and you are director of Materahub. How did you put all these different perspectives into practice? If you look at your hub, we see the use of many kinds of European programs. So maybe first start telling a little bit about your hub, because then we can see all here on the slides the many things you're doing. Maybe can you explain us first what your hub is doing?
Yes. Thank you very much, and nice to see you all today. Well, our hub is turning 10 this year. So in the last 10 years, we started from exploring and trying to understand how to support the cultural and creative sector in the city of Matera, which is our city, that 10 years ago was already a UNESCO site, but it was starting to explore the way towards becoming the European capital of culture, which happened in 2018. So there was the year before, in 2010, the green paper from the European Commission. There was an interest around these creative and cultural industries. And we thought that we could start to put together energies, people, projects, and try to understand how to foster and promote local development based on culture, based on creativity. When we started, of course, being based in the deep south of Italy, being based in one of the regions that is suffering the most of a long-lasting economic crisis, unemployment, youth unemployment, we had one big chance and one important element to try and build our activities, our initiatives, our project, that was trying and make the best and the most out of the many opportunities that Europe was giving us through the different funding schemes and programs. And so we started to work slowly on understanding how to support the creative and cultural sector with capacity building initiatives, which were somehow all going under the umbrella of Erasmus Plus funding, for example. So trying to understand what were the specific competencies and skills that the sector was more in need to develop. At the same time, we were thinking about this process that today is very much at the center of the discussion, the cross-sectorial cooperation. Think about, for example, the new European Bauhaus that we are all hearing and talking about. We wanted to explore and understand how to put together the creative sector and non-creative sectors in order to foster cooperation. And that's something that was possible to happen into pilot initiative funded, for example, by the COSME program, that is the program supporting the SMEs and innovation in Europe. At the same time, a lot of activities around research was possible thanks to Horizon 2020 project that we were involved. What was very important for us was to try and understand, talking about the framework, the picture that you showed at the beginning, trying to really understand the needs of the sector, trying to understand where they need to intervene in terms of capacity, trying to make the sector aware, thanks to the work of our hub, of the many opportunities that were available, and at the same time trying, and this is something that we have not completely achieved because it's very challenging for a private organization, trying to understand how, also thanks to the instruments that are provided by Europe, create a dialogue with policymakers. So that is really the last point where we are, but in the last 5-10 years, we have been able to really support 1,000 of operators from the sectors, connected them with a research institution, with intermediaries, with companies, with networks, with policymakers. For us, really, the access to the funding opportunities provided by European Commission has been a way to make things in a more European way, for sure, more structured, but also faster, because we had the possibility to cooperate with organizations that we couldn't find at the local level, but in the European dimension, and thanks to European network, we could have the chance to cooperate with them, to explore innovation, to really find what was needed and most useful for the sector operators.
You were able really to use all those different kinds of financial facilities from the EU. How did you develop the skills to be able to do that, to manage that, to acquire all those programs?
Well, we believe in the principle of networking, and we believe that, there is a capacity from the side of European Commission to really evaluate the power of innovation in European proposal. So we always activated the best partnership with a mix of local, but as I was saying before, European level. We understood what were the specific competencies that could form a successful partnership. We were always looking for innovation and trying to make everything new, but also very, very relevant, always starting with an in-depth analysis of the needs of the areas, the sectors, and the stakeholders we wanted to work with. And one thing that I find very, very important, we have always been working, keeping an eye at measuring the impact of the work that we were doing, so that we could always understand that everything that we were doing and the public funding that we were receiving to do that had always a potential multiplying effect and also a potential to be replicated after the time frame of European funding. So there was a mix of vision, innovation, knowing, of course, the instruments, and trying to really take out the most of the opportunities and the different programs that were available.
So what you did was partly networking to acquire the skills, but also something very important that you're saying is first trying to provide value using the facility, and then also show the impact so that you're actually more eligible for next project. Is that right?
Not only for next project, but also to make sure that at local level, the people that we were working with could understand the importance of what we were doing thanks and through the European cooperation, so that they would enter into this cooperation loop with us and make also the follow-up of this European project self-sustainable and able to continue without the need of further European funding, so that they could be embedded in our practice, they could be embedded into also the ecosystem at regional level in the different parts of Europe where the project were having an impact.
Okay. Well, thank you, Paolo, for now.
Thank you.
I'm going to our next panel member, who is Ciprian Stefan of the Astra Museum in Romania. And I think you're sitting outside, and we're seeing you probably inside or in your museum quarters. I think that looks pretty nice, and you have nice weather there, but which we're not having here. So your Astra Museum in Romania, near the wonderful city of Sibiu. Your museum in the countryside has developed very close ties with very different communities. in your surroundings to develop a more diverse income mix. I mean, what was your line of reasoning behind this?
Yeah, we build a relation with the community since 2018. Yes, right now I'm in the open air. I'm in the museum. In my office are other colleagues which are in another project invited in charter, and I had to came out to talk with you. But it's better out than in than in a building. We were very lucky that last year we saw the needs of the community. So because of the pandemic, a lot of people from the urban areas moved to the countryside, and they need authenticity. They need very good programs to have open space, also to have a lot of activities. So then we build that for them, but we build that with our community. So last year, let's say we had in the museum like 400,000 visitors and more than €1 million income. But for us, it's not a must to make money, but for us, it's a must to educate people and also to bring a lot of people in the museum in order to establish relations between the visitors, museum, and community. And in this way, we made the communities to assume our museum. So for us, the money is not a problem because of the people. The people and the companies came in the museum and invest in the museum because we educate people. So our investors from our region need an educated social society. So that is what we build in the museum. And for us, the authenticity is very important because it's this movement in Romania, to be very eco, to eat eco, to live eco, and so on. And it's very simple for us. Why? Because we still have the resources in the countryside. And then for us as a museum which present the rural areas, it's not difficult at all because we research the rural areas. We know the communities, we know the human resources, and they are very good resources, very skilled people. Okay, the main challenge for us is how can we communicate them to the public? And in our museum, we make this mix between communications and interpretations of the heritage for the public and with the public, because we involve the public and the visitors in our programs. And that helps us a lot. Also, we succeed to have some grants from Norway, Liechtenstein, and Iceland for developing our infrastructure. Because if you have a very good infrastructure, then you can build programs, then you can build communities, you can build everything that you want if you have this infrastructure. And also, we learn how to sell our products, to sell, and it's not so difficult, because, okay, we have a lot of programs which are dealing with the gastronomy. In 2019, Sibiu was European Region of Gastronomy, and we built programs how to promote the traditional gastronomy and how to interpret the traditional gastronomy in the very, very high-level restaurants. So then we offer to the business people some very old receipts with natural ingredients, and we certificate the receipts. And that was very important for them in order to promote themselves. And then they came back to our museum because the museum was the origin of this program. And this is how we adapt, because for us was a challenge since 2007 to adapt, every year to adapt to the needs of the community, but also to adapt to the grants that are in European Union on international level and on national level too. For us, 2020 wasn't a bad year. It was a very good year because every time we are optimists and we want to see the opportunities. And 2020 was a huge opportunity for us to make people understand which is the importance of the heritage and the natural resources from the countryside, because we are dealing with the countryside. So then we build programs, actions, and projects for them and with them. And they are now a part of our museum. For example, yesterday we had in the museum like 4,000 people who paid the ticket, because we have a lot of events, not just authentical events or traditional events. No, we want to deal also with the cultural and creative sector. We have IT system in museum. We have also artists, not just crafts people in museum, but also artisans. We have also a lot of people who are in the fashion, because we have this IA. IA is textiles, whereby woman, right now it is the mount of the IA. IA is like a shirt for the women. And we provoke the the fashion stylists how to reinterpret these traditions in order to put the craft people and the rural resources in a sustainable way. We want and we like to say that we have also an economical talk, because we try to convince our authorities that the museums can have in the society also economical effects, not just cultural, educational, or social effects. We do have economical effects in the society, direct and it's difficult for me to speak in English right now, indirect effect.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry
okay.
for that.
That's okay. Hey, Ciprian, you make it almost sound easy, but I don't believe that. It must be a lot of work.
Come here to see.
Yeah, of course.
We'd love to come,
but first tell us. I mean, you make it sound easy, but it needs a lot of curiosity. It needs a lot of connections. It needs a lot of building up ties with communities and providing value to all of them. How do you do it? Where did you get the skills to do this?
A lot of my team, they belong to the countryside. And then it's easy because we have the common language with them. We don't have to have a scientific language when we talk with the communities. We have to have their level. And if you know their needs, then it's simple. And for us, it was simple because of that. It was a little bit easy to convince the urban populations about the resources from the rural areas. But we like to offer examples. So when you start with examples, when you offer examples, then it's simple. When you provide only theory, then it's very difficult. But when you provide examples and they come and they taste and they feel and everything, then it's not so difficult. And then the community know that they have these instruments, financial instruments from the European Union regarding the rural areas, regarding agriculture, regarding heritage. And they invest until 2007 till now, they invest only in restorations, not in valorizations. And the communities have, beautiful buildings, historical buildings, which consume the money, they don't make the money. So we teach them how to make money from that, because we have a lot of resources for cultural tourism. Okay, let's teach them what is cultural tourism, not just talking and restoring. Let's tell the stories. Let's sell something very authentical. And then we, as an Astra Museum, we put the finger, these things, these programs, this area is authentical. And then visitors. Yeah.
So what you're doing actually is from every opportunity, from every community, you're kind of like developing what you could call a business model. Okay, so this is important, this is of value, and this is how we can make some kind of money out of it.
Yeah, because I need in 2030 or 2050, when I won't be in this museum, but when somebody will come after us, after me and my team, they should say, thanks to them, we still have resources in the rural areas and we still have people who can communicate and interpret the heritage. So that's the reason in 2019, we gained the European Museum Academy Award, because we are very involved in the communities, in the rural communities and urban communities too. Because we say, let's go further than our fans that surround us. And this is what we are doing here in Astra Museum and in our region too. And we think that we can be a best practice example for other museums from our country. And I'm sure that they will take our example, because it's not enough just us to beat and to do that. We are not so big. We are big, but not so huge. So then we have to provide best practice example. And we really succeed to do that.
Thank you very much, Ciprian.
Very welcome.
I'm going to the next panel member, Julia Pagel, and she's the Secretary General of NEMO, the network of museums or European museum organizations. If you look at the examples just provided, how do you look at the future of museum financing? I mean, what are the values that museums are providing? And what's the link to communities and financing?
Yeah, thank you, Joost, for the introduction. And also thank you, Ciprian, for bringing up these really good examples, because I was actually hoping that someone would bring an example for maybe a very bird's eye view that we as a network can provide. So thanks, Ciprian, for that. Well, if we look at the future financing of museums, I think we can be sure that after the pandemic, budgets for culture will shrink in the coming years. Museums have relatively well been able to survive the past COVID-19 months, some better, some for the worse. A lot have received public emergency support, but we foresee, and that goes in line with the findings of our COVID-19 and museum survey, that governments will cut budgets for museums. And that means for museums, looking at the fact that around 80% of museums are publicly funded, and many of them to a very large degree, that shrinking budgets will have an impact on the museums. So we have to make a very strong argument towards policymakers for continued public funding, which means to argue and advocate for strong and forward-looking and sustainable support that might not necessarily come from a culture budget. Because if museums, as Ciprian also pointed out, are social agents and they help for social cohesion and learning, why shouldn't they be supported through social and education budgets? And on the other hand, I think we need very strong advocacy to adapt the way that public funding is structured. I think it's currently not at all answering the present challenges of cultural operators. They have long been looking at the outputs and impacts on society, but we've come to a point where we have to look at reviewing structures and operations in order to generate the output that we feel is relevant for society. So I think museums and cultural operators at large need long-term sustainable support for organizational adaptation and change with a long-term vision, including new metrics of success that at present are still lacking social and environmental dimension and impact completely. And I think museums will also have to review their business models at large, which means diversifying income streams. That will be a core strategic objective, as it means that museums are building on sustainable, more resilient models. And this, sorry, Let me just say that private investment or increasing on revenues, as the Astra Museum was just saying, through new features and services, shops and online offers, cafes, by partnering with companies, by making more use of the network surrounding the actual museums is really important.
So what would you say that, because you were talking about relevant outputs for society, can you name some examples of those very relevant outputs that needs financing or that should be financed?
Well, for NEMO, we've defined values that museums have for society and that we think are crucial, and it's the social, the education, and the economic value next to the collection value, because this is what museums are based on. So when I'm thinking about social value that museums can provide, then I'm thinking about their capacity to be a public space for debate, for critical thinking, learning, especially outside of the traditional learning institutions, for inspiration and well-being. I don't know if you've heard that in Canada, for example, museum visits are now prescribed by doctors to increase well-being, just to name some. But I would also argue that museums are often at the center of urban and rural regeneration activities, like the typical example, Bilbao and the Guggenheim Museum, but also Riverside Museum in Glasgow, that have contributed to successful economic, but also cultural revival.
Would those, let's say, outputs or values or relevancy come back to the museum?
You mean in terms of income?
Hard question.
But is that your question,
in
terms of income? Well, to a certain degree, it certainly does, but I think there are really some persistent challenges that prevent museums from really making use of that and making use of the diverse potential income streams. I think basic ingredients is really to be an agile and open, transformative organization. And that's not the case, mostly because of the structure that museums are built on. And also because funding logic for largely publicly funded and also organized sectors are still built on the assumption that if you make profit, then you will receive less funding. And that is not very innovative. So the combination of hardly any reward for seeking out new opportunities, plus lacking resources for innovation, make it very difficult for the culture sector to become more entrepreneurial. And in our study about the impact of COVID-19 on museums, we realized that museums lost a lot of money, a lot of income because they had to close for the public. and 50% of the museums didn't even look for alternative funding. Another large part tried, but did not manage to get funding. And that was not the case because they didn't need it. That reflects an absence of knowledge, lacking capacity, resources for the museums to even go there and seek for the innovative funding.
Okay, so if we're looking at like what we talk about, the 4 parts of the ecosystem, financial facilities, skills, info and matching, and policy. I mean, what could NEMO do next in those 4 parts of the ecosystem?
Yeah, good question. I think the most relevant work that we as a network can do is probably somewhere between point 3, so need of information and matching function, and point 4, the policy making, which I would call awareness raising. So we need to make sure that there is more exchange of best practices and capacity building tailored to different needs and sizes and settings of museums, because a museum situated in a rural area, very small, is completely different than an international museum in the midst of Paris. And we need a peer-to-peer platform that allows for discussions. And I think we also need to raise awareness to build the trust on the new financing options, including taking away the fear of embarking to these business models and also running the risk of losing public finance, and enabling the small operators to benefit from those opportunities. So I think professional networks like NEMO are actually made for this because we are built on shared purposes. The network only exists because of its members, and it gets stronger with the members. So if that's the shared purpose and that's the shared objective, then this is the basis for innovation and development.
Julia, so it looks like you have a nice agenda ahead.
a big one.
A big one. Okay, thanks for now. Onur, Emul, you're also partner in the Creative Flip project. We have seen from the previous speakers how they produce value, and I might say also produce intellectual property in one way or another. But I think we can also conclude from research within Creative Flip that IP is a very underused financing stream in the CCS. Why is it so hard for the CCS to use IP?
Yes, thank you very much, Joost. Thanks a lot. And yes, unfortunately, you are right. I say unfortunately because, as an IP guy here, definitely I'm here to explain the importance of IP to everyone here. But I mean, for your question, I just need to say that we all know that IP is not the easiest topic to grasp, and definitely not the sexiest one, although I'm trying to make it a bit more sexier now. But it doesn't necessarily mean that it is a mission impossible for artists, for the creatives to deal with IP. Because I mean, even taking very small steps would cause really big differences. And actually, this small step is awareness raising. Because I mean, we all know that not only for CCIs, for all sectors, but especially for CCIs, the awareness raising of intellectual property rights are rather low. And actually, we have already proved this through our studies within Creative Flip project. And I would like to speak about some numbers, although I know that speaking about numbers here for creatives is not the best. But I am the boring guy here, so I would like to speak about some numbers, but don't worry. It will not be,
okay, so can I have the slide, please?
Yeah, it will not be that boring for you, hopefully. Okay, so you see a graph there, which we have produced within our Creative Flip report, which you can download it now from our Creative Flip website. It is about the IP use within CCI sectors. So now I know that I can be a bit more boring than putting on these glasses. But I mean, in this graph, you see these 4 main IP assets, 4 main IP tools: trademarks, designs, copyright, and patents. This is actually a result of our survey. And you see that these red bars, they represent the use of these IP titles. And for example, for trademark, 27% of our respondents, they use trademarks as an integral part of their business. For designs, it is 26%. For copyright, it's quite expected, it's 39%, and for patents, it is 11%. The orange bars represent, yes, they are using these IP titles when needed. And there are also answers for I rarely use these IP titles, or I never use these IP titles, or I have no idea at all. And actually, I would like to bring to your attention to the fact about these never and no idea parts. If you can move to the other slide, you see that, next please, you see that for patents, okay, this can be a bit more expectable, I guess, because like more than half of the respondents to our survey, they believe that they have never used a patent or they have no idea about patenting. But look, for example, for trademarks, trademarks are the backbones of marketing, of getting money. Our topic is how to make money out of intellectual property rights, and trademarks are definitely the natural IP rights where you can make money when you are marketing your product or service. But even for trademarks, 1/3 of our respondents, they have either never used trademarks or they have no idea about trademark, what trademark is and how to use trademarks. Same for designs. Okay, patents, it is really I would say a very bitter result, I would say desperate one. But even for copyright, which is the most well-used IP title, 15% more or less of our respondents, they have never used copyright, or they don't have any idea about copyright. So you can clearly see that there is this lack of IP awareness within CCIs, but you know what? I mean, it is not only for CCIs, it is also for other sectors. So I cannot blame CCIs, definitely. If you can go next to the other slide, you see a number. And this is a very, for me, when I first heard this, it was a very scary number for me, 9%. This number is coming from a report from a report of European Union IP Office and European Patent Office study, and this number represents the number of IPR owners within the EU. I'm not talking about world. I'm not talking about, I don't know, like third world countries or developing countries. I'm talking about EU countries. 9% of the EU SMEs are IPR owners, meaning that 91% of the EU SMEs, they don't have any IPR. Even if we move to the other slide, this is another bitter number for you. It is 99%. And because this number represents patent owners. Patents represent innovation. It represents novelty, and it represents technical solutions, and only 1% of EU SMEs, they have patents, meaning that 99% of EU SMEs, they don't have patents. So you see, there is a big IP, lack of IP awareness. And this is something that we need to tackle and we need to focus, I guess.
Okay, so what is your main recommendation? Because I mean, we see those numbers; they look quite awful. How can the culture and creative sector turn their assets, which they have? How can they turn them into money?
Yeah. Okay, so this is the sexiest part, I guess, because and here before maybe answering this question, I just would like to tell you that I would like to flip the topic a bit, because until now we have been speaking about how we can access money. I mean, how CCIs can access money around, how they can access to funds. But now I would like to talk about how we can make money from our resources, from our intellectual assets. So this is the question: how can we make money from intellectual property rights? There are many options to make use of, to exploit intellectual property rights. I've shown you some numbers about IP ownership: 9%, 99%. okay, it is true that having an IP is something, but exploiting what you have, it is something different. Because having an IP right doesn't mean that, okay, I have this nice, patent certificates or trademark certificates on our walls. Okay, this may look nice, but in the end, this doesn't make any sense if you would like to make money. So when you have an IP asset, you need to make use of it. You need to exploit it in a proper way. And that's what we call exploitation of intellectual property rights. You can either enforce your IP rights, you can be a bit more offensive. You can make use of your IP rights when you are, you can restrict the others to make use of IP rights, your trademarks, your designs, your patents, or your copyright, or maybe even better use in the market, you can commercialize your intellectual property rights. For example, you can make use of it. You can sell your IP rights when you can make use of your trademarks when you are selling your product, but it needs to be registered in order to obtain your rights, in order to use your rights. But also you can grant licenses. For example, okay, I don't have any, let's say that I have a trademark or I have a patent, but I have no idea about the market in Romania. So what you can do is you can find a partner in Romania, a licensee in Romania, and then you can grant licenses so that you can make use of the experience of your Romanian partner, because they already have experience in Romania, which I don't have. But at the same time, they can make use of my invention or my trademark. So they don't need to reinvent something. They don't need to register something. There's already a registered right, but they can make use of my right and they can access to their market in Romania through my intellectual property right. So we can make money, both my licensee and myself, so that we can create a community, a partnership around our intellectual property rights. So,
okay, so Onur, what you're actually saying is that SMEs from the cultural creative sector who use their copyrights and use it wisely, they're financially better off.
Definitely. I mean, it is a way to make money. I have just two other boring numbers for you, and then I'll finish this part. Next, please. This is because this makes IP sexier. Because we are talking about money. This is again from the study of the European Patent Office and the European Union IP Office. It is revealed that 36% of the companies having patents, they create 36% more revenue than the ones who do not have patents. So if you have a patent, it means that you may create 36% more revenue than the ones which do not have. Or maybe, okay, for creative industries, maybe patents are not the most common intellectual property rights because of the nature of artistic creations. But if we talk about IP rights overall, next please. The number is quite well. It is 20%. So it means that if you have an IP right and if you know how to make use of it, it is highly possible that you can make at least 20% more revenues than the others. So IP is, believe me, I can be a boring guy, but believe me, IP is not that boring, and it can be quite sexier when making money. So make use of IP.
Okay, Onur, thank you very much. So we can conclude from this that for the future, there's a lot of work to be done to raise awareness for IP and how to use IP for your financing. That's for sure. Okay, thank you for now. Our next panelist is Maciej Szymanowicz. And Maciej, you are working for European Commission, And you have been closely involved in developing EU financing facilities for CS. And one of them is the Culture and Creative Sectors Guarantee Facility. It has now been around for a while and has been developing a lot. Can you tell us now a bit how it works and for whom this is interesting?
Of course, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for excellent presentations. Actually, a lot of problems we are highlighting today, these are elements we are keeping in mind with developing the access to finance instruments for the culture and creative sectors. And we are doing this already for some time. Also, if you know other institutions like the European Investment Fund, with other colleagues in the European Commission, also with, for instance, IDEA was quite crucial when we were designing the first financial instrument. What we discovered when we were, collecting statistical data on culture and creative sectors is that, their importance in terms of employment or economic weight is quite similar to other subsectors in Europe, being this tourism industry or ITC. But when we are discussing with the financial intermediaries and with the CCS companies itself, it seemed a couple of years ago that there was no common ground of understanding. When we are trying to collect data from banks, for instance, of how much money they lend to the culture and creative sectors, these figures were non-existent. And of course, as you know, for 99% of European SMEs, access to finance, access to debt, to loans from banks is a crucial way they provide for the cash flow. So even in the culture and creative sector, when, for instance, a significant part of enterprises, they rely on subsidies. Having subsidies only come in certain part of time, and then as a company, as an enterprise, you need a constant cash flow. It's very difficult to sustain your business in a proper way. And that was the beginning, actually, when the Commission came up with the proposal of Culture and Creative Sectors Guarantee Facility. The idea, of course, of the Commission program is how to reach out to the companies on the ground. And with the financial instruments, and Ciprian mentioned, Paolo mentioned COSME, is that we normally work via intermediated finance. So we are trying to find the banks which operate in given regions or countries. So the SMEs and banks, they are quite close together. And that's how was the idea of Culture and Creative Sectors Guarantee Facility was born. At the beginning, we received quite skeptical appreciation of this new instrument. They were saying, market is too small, very IP-based. Every project is a kind of a prototype. We don't have on the banking sector any experience with working with the companies from the side. They are just too risky for us. So, okay, we said we will take off those risks from you. If you decide to create a dedicated financial product for the culture and creative sectors, and there are some eligibility criteria which we created, and also some caveats for banks, for instance. As a lot of CCS companies, they are IP-based, we tried to convince them to evaluate IP assets. And secondly, we said that personal collateral and this loan is not possible, because in a lot of the culture and creative sectors, you actually have small companies where the only asset is the assets which are private to the entrepreneur. So we said those are two basic conditions. Create a product for the culture and creative sectors. And I think this is a good news because, well, we started with a quite a limited budget of 120 million. The budget was more than doubled in 2 years to over 250 million euros for the guarantees. The budget was fully used. Currently, there are 21 agreements which are covering nearly whole Europe with banks who are creating dedicated financial instruments for the culture and creative sectors. They already committed to give over 2.3 billion euros for the companies. And actually, even the program is relatively new, there are over 1 billion euros of loans guaranteed for the culture and creative sectors. And all the sectors are benefiting. So we are thinking at the beginning, okay, audiovisual is the most advanced, maybe music sector will benefit. But actually, if you look at the definition of culture and creative sectors, which is mainly based on the NASA code, being this a museum, being this festival, being this a theater, audiovisual production, video games, all of them are actually using this instrument. Of course, there's a lot of work still to be done, and I think the communication is very important. It's still a new element. What we have done on the communication side, one was a kind of a technical assistance, which we developed for banks to mainly train the risk departments and marketing departments to prepare a project which is fit for purpose and to commercialize this quite actively on the market. And then, of course, the outreach to the CCS, this is mainly done via different communication actions, our cooperation with Creative Europe desks who are covering whole Europe, info days, which we are organizing in the member states. And now we are entering the new programming period, of course. And we will have new programs. So the good news is that culture and creative sector guarantee facility will not die. Actually, this will be like intuitively roll out under InvestEU with the same eligibility criteria, and hopefully with the biggest budget, because what we are getting from our partners in the EIF is that there are more and more banks who are trying to get this. And maybe I will finish as we can move to the next slide. We are also thinking about other financial options for the culture and creative sector. So loans, of course, important, but in some sectors, especially in audiovisual and music, also equity finance is important. And the idea here is quite similar, to develop the European network of investors who know the sector and are willing to invest money into the sector. So this is a maybe not so brief, but I think quite detailed introduction to CCSG.
Okay, I think Maciej, so what you're doing now, because I mean the guarantee facilities is about loans. Media Invest, that looks more about capital injections. This is just a plan, I understand, or what kind of phase is it in now?
Well, for CCSGF, we just wait for budget to be approved under InvestEU, and this will be rolled out immediately. For Media Invest, we are currently developing the eligibility criteria, and we are doing a market check, as we have done with debt finance as well. So to prepare with a project which is market ready, and where the companies, or the investors and the companies are willing to use such a financial tool. Because ultimately, our goal is to increase the professionalization and outreach of the European culture and creative companies. And whether they will use debt for this, or in some cases, if they use equity, it's actually secondary. So
okay, and why do you do this for the audiovisual industry only?
Well, audiovisual industry here is understood broadly. So it covers TV, cinema, video games, XR, reality. We think that as with every new project, you have to think about the market. And now, when we are talking about equity investment, we are talking a lot of money. And for the time being, those sectors probably are most ready. But as the example of the debt instrument shown, as much as it develops, then the investors or banks are open to also look into other sectors which they think that are unbankable or not promising enough.
Yeah, because the audiovisual industry is quite capital intensive, so that's probably a good sector to start with. That's what I think then, yeah?
Correct.
Okay, thank you, Maciej. I'm now turning to Barbara Stacher, our policy officer from DG JAC. Well, just being the last in our panel maybe puts you in a little bit tough position, because you're part of policy making on the ELFM. And of course, we talked about the different parts of the ecosystem, you know, facilities, matching, capacity building, and then policy making. So maybe now everybody's looking for you for the final answers, but of course, that's not right. We all have responsibilities. But still, what could the EU do concerning the 4 parts of this ecosystem.
Yes, thank you very much for this whole ecosystem approach. I think that's what it's all about, because you have seen in the different directions that the cultural and creative sectors and industries can now finance themselves, and budgets have been increased. So now the question is how to find out what to do exactly and how. And I just wanted to mention one thing, because sometimes people think, they need to hire a consultant, they need to pay. It's not about that, because actually, just as a personal tip, I can say that some proposals which have been written by professional consultants, they fall through because it shows that they did copy and paste. So it's better actually to write your own proposal. And there are places, I mean, the Commission finances the Creative Europe desks, the Horizon desks, the Erasmus desks to do exactly that, to assist you in writing your own proposal. Now, concerning FLIP, there are a few things that have not been mentioned, maybe because they will be mentioned later, but I just wanted to say concerning IP, what Onur said, it's very interesting. And in the next phase of FLIP, which is already starting now, actually, there will be a tool to help cultural and creative sectors with their IP, an IP help desk tool. There will also be a financing tool. Then there is also 2 additional tools which are developed by the Commission now to help through the EU financing jungle, as a creative sector, how to go about it. So in this sense, I think it's very good that kind of different tools are being developed, because at the same time, the funds are growing, because I don't know if it has been mentioned, there's also the KIC, the culture, and it has not been mentioned yet. That's yet another huge money pot. Mm-hmm. So
maybe you should explain shortly what's KIC.
Yeah, it's knowledge and innovation communities for culture and creative sectors and industries, which is also it's an open call for proposals, which is going to pump a lot of money into the sectors as well. The question now is how to absorb it best, so that actually it reaches the people, because in the end, it should not be stuck somewhere in the system. It should really reach the people most in need, which comes back to the discussion that was held in the previous panel, the working conditions of artists, precarity. I mean, how to make sure that this goes where it should go. And here I think the networks can play a major role, like, before we had Bernd Fesel or Tere Badia from Culture Action Europe, from the European Business Network, from Creative Hubs Network, of course. Yeah, so it's on all of us somehow to work together. And I think the FLIP project has already started to do that, to kind of mix people together, like here or, in other of those places.
Yeah. And I was thinking about some of the examples that we have seen involving communities and providing value for them, which helps financing. So, I mean, it's both ways. It's about providing financial facilities, of course, but that's only a basis. But then people have to be able to apply to them with like an authentic story, with something that they want to achieve. But also involving different communities, I think, is a very important step.
And I think that's where peer learning comes in. So this is why I'm really glad that we have Paolo Montemurro here from Materahub in this session, because he is actually a champion in understanding the different logic of the different money pots. So he started from a European Capital of Culture. Then he kind of moved into Erasmus, into Horizon. And he also has this COSME project, which is from another financing landscape, which is with SMEs, where he links culture with tourism, with capitals of culture, with SMEs, with hubs, with innovation. That's the way to go. So, I think it's about good practice and learning. So you don't need to hire consultants. Just look at the cases that how, I would say, go through the project proposals which are there. Who are the consortium partners? How did they do it? Which kind of mix? How do they combine very small with very big players, which is coming back to the previous discussion, saying, the small players, they are never in. Actually, yes, they can be in very easily, like some of these consortia, like Materahub shows. You have a small hub partnering with an institution, with a university, for example, with a regional institution, with a museum. So you kind of mix people together, which usually do not really fit together as of size, in terms of what they do. And I think that's what makes it.
Julia, coming back to you for a moment, if you hear this about peer learning, combining larger and smaller institutions, etc., what does it mean to you?
I think Barbara is perfectly right. I think there is also another aspect, and that lies within the institutions that are the potential beneficiaries of those funding opportunities, and that is the capacity to even reach out there, to even go to the national contact point, to even read through the potential partners. And this is what I was trying to say earlier, that a lot of people and a lot of organizations don't have the capacity to make that extra step. And I think we need more of this peer learning, and also of the awareness raising that it is possible, and that there's a lot of help out there, and a lot of peer-to-peer help out there, because that's way more helpful than going to a national contact point for a Creative Europe application, for example. We had a report about the museum's use of EU funding programs inside the Creative Europe program, but also outside within the period for 2014 to 18. And for Creative Europe, only 6% of the Creative Europe budget was used by museum, 6%. For Erasmus Plus, Horizon 2020, Europe for Citizens, it was less than 1%. So I think the networks and the intermediaries that connect the opportunities to the potential beneficiaries are really of the essence here.
Yeah, so it's awareness raising, information matching, and those are really things that help. Paolo, how did you start this? I mean, you started somewhere.
Yeah, we started by trying to bring together all the different pieces of the puzzle. We started by trying and failing. At the beginning, it was not easy. It was a matter of, and there is no school for knowing how to write a good proposal and winning proposal. Of course, what is important is, as I was saying at the beginning, knowing very well the sector, knowing the needs of the sector, building initial brainstorming activities with the key people that need the proposal and the project that we're going to develop. And then, trying to be innovative, because what our experience shows is that in every single EU funding program, there is space for the creative and cultural sector. And actually, it's very, very appreciated, the creativity that it can come from the actors of the sector. So it's not only having, for example, proposals that are working specifically on the needs of the sector, but also understanding how the sector can contribute to foster innovation in other sectors, different sectors, bringing the capacity of operators from CCIs to approach processes, methodologies in a different way. Then, of course, I think that a lot did our need to really trying to do things in a way that the local dimension couldn't allow us to do. So we immediately understood that at European level and European cooperation, there was room for us, being a small organization from the south of Italy, to start cooperation with a very famous university from all over Europe, or like having a dialogue with policymakers while our own policymakers were not able to listen to us and experiment and have a little playground for innovation that then slowly we are now bringing back to the local dimension and trying to move it to a more local ecosystem to benefit from this European wider cooperation.
Yeah. And if we go back to another subject we'll be talking about, IP, how do you deal with IP?
Well, most of the product of our work in the framework of European projects are, like, of course, being the result of public funding, open and available for everyone who wants to use it in the framework of the project or after the framework of the project. What we are trying to do is to push now specifically on some of the results of, I don't know, thinking about Erasmus Plus, for example, trying to push the logic of Creative Commons, or you know, developing a product and offering it for free for all the other stakeholders of the community, so that they can jump on it and try to adapt it to the specific needs of other communities, other countries, or different sectors, for example. So I can give you one example. One of our very first projects that was about exploring the entrepreneurial competencies of the creative and cultural sector. We started from using the business model canvas, readapting it using a new vocabulary for the creative and cultural sector. So we created the creative project canvas, but being open, the first tool that we took, this tool is still open for everyone who wants to take it and use it and change it and so on. So of course, this is very important for us, because we want the community to build a shared knowledge where everything that we have been able to test and develop is available for everyone.
Okay, Paolo. Well, thank you very much. Also, thank you to all other panelists who've been contributing to our session. I think what we've seen now in this panel, we've seen activities in all 4 parts of the ecosystem: financial facilities, capacity building, information and matching, and policy making. And I think, well, it's important that we keep those 4 things in mind. Also, indeed, for the next flip project and continue. But this is the end of this session today, and I will now give the floor to Wanda, who will wrap up this session.
And panelists of today, day 1 of the Creative Flip final conference, Flipping the Future. After shaping policy today, we look very much forward to tomorrow, day 2 of this conference, under the motto, Taking Action. So please make sure to be with us tomorrow as of 10 a.m. Central European Time to discover Creative Flip Learning Labs, our peer-to-peer exchange program, Creatives Unite platform, and the value of cross-sectorial cooperation. We'll also be talking about the importance of creative skills, about skills needs and gaps. And of course, we have prepared for you different parallel running workshops tomorrow. Isabelle has already mentioned and invited you to the workshop that will be presenting a funding guide called So You Need Money. Another workshop is dedicated to our ambassadors of change, who will be sharing with you their innovative ways of tackling the crisis as creative hubs. And a third workshop will be a serious game. You're invited to play a serious game called Act to Flip. Lastly, we look very much forward to be welcoming Niklas Ninas, member of the European Parliament, and many more great panelists and speakers with us tomorrow. With this, we would like to wish you a pleasant evening, and we look forward to seeing you tomorrow.